Hello and welcome to the Repairer's Voice, the program designed to explore the Hebrew foundations of our Christian faith. Anthony and I today are again very excited because we managed to get Simon with us again today.
Yes.
He is, as many of you know already, the presenter of the Middle East Report, Politics Today, the European Report. He is a conference speaker, public speaker, and we are very humbled to have him again. Mr. Simon Barrett, you're welcome to the Repairer's Voice.
Thank you very much, Evelyn and Anthony. It's great to be with you again. Very much enjoyed the last program.
Yes, we did too. Maybe, Anthony, you have...
Yes, we thank God that you managed to create time again for us. We're so very honored to again have you, and we believe that we're going to take this thing to the next level, to inform people about our Christian our Christian faith vis-a-vis the Judaic faith. Thank you for coming.
And our Christian and Jewish relations, which we are seeking to repair by God's grace. And last week we talked about some of the journey of Israel from 48 till today, isn't it? The journey has been very rough. We spoke about how we should all be mindful of this journey they are undertaking because it concerns us all. Israel needs to be in the land.
Yes.
Isn't it, Simon?
Yes.
Maybe you could take it from
the Jewish people need to be in the land because it's the only land where the Jewish people have actually prospered. That land has only prospered under Jewish ownership. And there's a wonderful ministry, American ministry called Hayuval that based himself up in the Shomron. So for our viewers, the Shomron is Samaria, just up from the Judean hills, which is the biblical heartland of Israel. And having been there last year as part of the Christian Media Summit organised by the Israeli Government Press Office, we went up to Shiloh, which is the foundations of our Western civilization. This is where the Ark of the Covenant rested. This is where we have the amazing stories.
Place, beautiful place.
It's an amazing place. And it's not until you're up there, and I met these guys from Hayuval. These are kind of American farmers that their father in the 90s said, we need to go to Israel to plant vineyards because that's what Isaiah says, that the vineyards will be planted on the mountains of Israel. So they went there, they planted the vineyards. And what they said was really interesting. They're saying that any other land, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what race or nationality you are, the land will respond to you, but not this land. This land only responds to the Jewish people. And so they've been able to produce award-winning wine. They don't take any profits for themselves. They give that to the local Jewish community because they want to be part of that fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Now, if you can imagine, we haven't had any fulfillment of biblical prophecy for over 2,000 years. Really, I mean, with the last book of Revelation coming alive in our day, and then suddenly since 1948, 1967, even in terms of going up until the 90s, we're seeing the Bible come alive, which indicates that we're living in biblical times, and these are exciting times to live in. Also, what's so interesting as well, that in the Jewish calendar, we have the main feasts, but there were two feasts that were added in the time of Jesus' lifetime. The first one was Hanukkah, and the other one was Purim.
Purim,
Now, with Israel being back in the land, they have new Jewish holidays. So, for example, one holiday the Jewish people celebrate is known as Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is Israel's Independence Day. They celebrate or remember Yom HaKaron, which is a day when the nation remembers the great military sacrifice paid by the soldiers in defending the nation of Israel and those caught up in acts of terrorism. You also have Yom Yerushalayim, which is Jerusalem Day. So here we go. For over 2,000 years, there has been no new Jewish holidays. And yet, over the last 70 years, 70 years, we've seen new Jewish holidays
being added.
Which is extraordinary.
And this is very, very important to us because they need to be in the land, and the land is responding to their presence. I mean, we're talking about the agricultural produce. Somebody said it's an agricultural wonder of the world. Because their produce not only feeds them, but they export so many fruits and vegetables. Isn't it?
They used to. Now Israel's such a high-tech economy that They actually export more in innovation and technology, and Israel's a startup nation. They're leading the way in terms of everything to do with computers, everything to do with apps, smartphones, technology. Israel is at the forefront of this innovation.
That's very true.
And they only have the second largest number of startup nations compared to the United States. So Israel is a world player in information technology and innovation, as well as technology in terms of agriculture and also health technology. But can I say the reason why Israel is so important is because this is God's nation.
Yeah.
He's redeemed his people from the four corners of the earth through Aliyah, and the Jewish people have come back literally from the four corners of the earth back into their ancient homeland. But it's also important in terms of God when we look at Genesis chapter 12, 1 to 4. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. So a nation's destiny or fate actually depends on how they treat the nation of Israel. If they curse Israel and want to destroy Israel, they'll be cursed and they'll be destroyed themselves. If those nations want to bless Israel, they'll be blessed. So if our nations want to be blessed, then we bless Israel and we bless the Jewish people.
And you can see it all through Scripture.
Yeah.
I mean, the land blossoming in Isaiah 35. If you have time, you can read it for yourself. Isaiah 35, Ezekiel 36, and Ezekiel 37.
Yeah, they are all there.
Fulfillment of God's word. And the thing is, if God has fulfilled these words, then we can also be assured of his faithfulness to us. So there is a connection.
Yes.
I mean, God is faithful to the words of his covenant to Abraham.
Correct.
So we can also take that assurance and know that God is faithful. His word is sure. His word is going to come to pass. And one of the miracles of our time is the establishment of the nation of Israel.
Absolutely.
And look at us discussing this today. I'm not from Israel. Mr. Barrett is not from Israel. But Mr. Barrett, why is this important to us Christians?
If we want the blessing of God upon our lives, if we want to know God's heart, if we want to know what he's really about, then you have to understand his love and his passion for Israel and the Jewish people. Because without that, you only have a very limited understanding of who God is. And you understand that he's actually worked throughout history with the Jewish people.
Yes.
And this is why we also got to remember that our adversary, Satan, hates the Jewish people. Ever since the time of Moses, after actually the time of Joseph, we see there the Pharaoh talks about the fact that they had forgotten Joseph. So in other words, they had forgotten what Joseph did for the nation of Egypt. They forget that God gave him that vision, just very briefly, of the 7 years of harvest, of bountiful produce, and the 7 years of famine. And he was able then to, in his position as Prime Minister of Egypt, the number 2 under the Pharaoh, to actually save Egypt and the entire Egyptian empire. And it says that this new Pharaoh did not remember Joseph. So therefore, he saw the Jewish people in the land of Egypt as a threat. And want to enslave them.
That's true.
And this is where we see Satan's hatred against the Jewish people come up in every age, because they remind Satan of who he is and his damned destiny.
Exactly. And that is why, Anthony, you went there the other day. You took us right to the book of Genesis. Isn't it? And the journey of Israel from 48 has been very rough. You know, it's been very rough, and we've come all the way, and we are now here in 2020. But we want to cast our mind back to certain times in history during this journey when they had to literally fight for their existence, such as the 6-day war in June 67. Now, maybe many of you are watching and you weren't born, but some of us were born. And we need to be mindful and embrace some of these truths, because they would help us understand God's faithfulness and also help us understand our place in embracing what God is doing there today and being part of it, because they have fought through right till now. So, Simon, we want you to take us to the 6-day war. in 1967.
And not only the 6-day war, and subsequently there are other wars that happened immediately during, post this period.
The journey.
Because what we're trying to achieve is I want to bring knowledge to our Christian community, that they should understand that these people paid a price. They paid a price to give us the word of God that we are reading.
Yes.
Amen.
They are still paying a price, to actually sustain the place where Jesus is going to come. You know, he said that you shall not see me again until you said, blessed is the name that comes in the name of the Lord. You see, Baruch haba Bashem Adonai. Until we say that, who is going to say that? You know, so we need to begin to wake up as believers, you know, that is where our Messiah that sacrificed his life for you and I to be engrafted into this covenant. In our first segment, you said that if the Jewish people are cast away or are replaced, then we are also in danger of that. That this God that we are serving is he's a flippant one who changes his mind willy-nilly. You understand? So you and I, Simon, are in danger that tomorrow God will say, oh, Simon and Tony, you know, get out of the way. Let me pick up some other people, you know, to use. But that is not the case with the God that we say. He's a faithful God.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's why we want information to be disseminated to our people to come to a point where they realize that it is their duty, our duty as believers, to stand
with Israel.
For Israel.
Yes.
So we also have to understand the context of the 6-day war to understand the challenges that Israel faced. So, for example, if we look at April and May 1967, you already had the Syrians based up in the Golan Heights shelling Israeli agricultural villages and towns. Fishermen were being attacked on the Sea of Galilee. Israel had no safety in the north. Then what we see is that Gamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt at the time, was having huge pressure from the Arab Street to invade Israel. So what he did after Israel's war, known as the Suez War of 56, where you had UN peace troops based in the Sinai, what he did is he told all those UN troops to leave. And then he occupied the Sinai with his own military, and he blocked the Straits of Hormuz to Israeli shipping. He also then signed a military pact with the Syrians and also with the Jordanians. Now, during that time, there was pressure for war, and the drums of war were beating very loudly. And the Jewish people were thinking they were going to have to prepare for another Holocaust. They thought that if they don't respond quickly, something's going to happen. So essentially what Israel then decided to do, and this is the very doctrine of the Israeli Defense Force, was that if Israel has one chance of survival, one chance, if they are in a war, they lose that war, another Holocaust faces, and the nation of Israel is destroyed. So they developed a concept of transferring the war to their enemy's territory. So that becomes the fear of operation. So you take so therefore you protect the nation and you go there. So what happened is that the Israelis are in the most audacious aircraft attack in history. In one single day took out the Egyptian Air Force. So they completely destroyed the Egyptian Air Force. There's also intelligence reports of how these Egyptian bombers were preparing to use chemical weapons on Israel's main population center, which is Tel Aviv. So literally within a day, the Israelis carried out so many sorties that destroyed the entire Egyptian Air Force. Then they sent in the ground troops into the Sinai. They warned the Jordanians and then the King Hussein of Jordan not to intervene, but he was believing the false reports coming out of Cairo that the Israelis were facing a crushing defeat. He then decided to join in and started firing rockets and missiles and tanks from Jordan from East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem, because prior to this, Jerusalem was divided. So Israel then went to war against Jordan, captured Jerusalem and the Old City, and everything we know now as Judea and Samaria. And then the Israelis then took on the Syrians in the north and tripled the size of their territory by 3 times
in the Golan
6
Heights.
days, in the Golan Heights,
Wow.
in 6 days, which was described as the greatest military victory ever seen by any army in the
history.
world. And so therefore Jerusalem became once again back into the hands of the Jewish people. The Western Wall, which they were not able to go and pray, which is the retaining wall of the temple, even during the British Mandate period, when the British were in control, would not allow the Jewish people to go up to the Western Wall, and the Jordanians would not allow the Israelis to do it. They used that whole area as a rubbish dump, dumping all the rubbish. So all the rubbish had to be cleared. They brought in diggers, and they just cleared the way for the wall to be free. And this is where you see the emotional pictures of the Israeli commandos praying at the Western Wall, because they felt that they'd come home and that Jerusalem was back in the hands of the Jewish people.
You're watching the repairer's voice. And we're discussing here with Mr. Barrett the rough journey of Israel post World War II till today, and her relations with the nations, because we need to be mindful of this. This concerns us. You know, it's not just us gleaning through the Bible and getting the messages in the Bible, but present-day miracles are happening. And one of them is the establishment and the existence of the Jewish nation of Israel. And today they are going back there from all over the world. And Simon called it Aliyah. But you know what? Somebody might be watching and wondering, what is Aliyah?
Aliyah in Hebrew translates as to go up. To go up to God. But it's also a term that the Jewish people use for making a return to Israel. So to make immigration to Israel, they call it Aliyah. And what we've really seen is the gathering. And this is what's so amazing about Israel, is so diverse. You have Jewish people from Argentina, Jewish people from Brazil, from the United States, from all over Europe, from Africa, even as far as China as well, and India. And so therefore represents this incredible melting pot of God bringing the Jewish people all the way from all over the world back into the land again.
And is this biblical?
In fulfillment of biblical prophecy, absolutely.
It says, I'll tell the North, give up. You know, I think it's in Ezekiel that it's saying that the North will give up his people, you know, from all the 4 corners of the world. He'll gather them back into the land that he's given to them.
And that is one of the areas that we can help. We see ministries all over the world, especially in America, bringing people down to Israel. We can get involved in that. And we can also get involved in various ministries in the land. One of them is the Vision for Israel, and several other humanitarian agencies doing a wonderful job. And for your pastor out there watching, you want to support any of the congregations in the land. There are several at the moment. And there, Simon. We heard this about over 120 congregations at the moment. And you can get behind them and support them. As it's written, you mentioned that last time in Romans. Paul was saying we need to also support them with our material goods. Because like you said, they've laid...
Chapter 15.
Romans 15.
26.
Right. If you have time, you can read it.
So we need to... It says that if we have benefited from their spiritual things, it's mandatory on us. In fact, he used the word mandatory. The King James says it's mandatory on us to support them with their physical needs. So we encourage the viewers over there, especially as a believing Christian, you know, a spirit-filled believing Christian, we encourage you to begin to really research these things, take these things, you know, and examine it. We are very grateful to have Simon. And before we run out of time, I would want Simon to throw light on the, because I realized there was another war which they fought in 1973. Within 6 years. I mean, within 6 years of ending this 67 war, I mean, another one came, you know, so can you just tell us what happened in that 73 war?
Okay, the 73 war was the most brutal war that Israel faced because they were complacent. Because they, in 67, achieved this an amazing victory, they felt that no one could attack them again. So what the Russians did, or the Soviets, was to supply and rearm the Egyptians and also the Syrians with newly developed...
Hang on a minute before you continue. Sorry to butt in. I thought earlier on the Russians successive governments, they were supporting Israel.
Initially, they supported Israel during her War of Independence.
Okay.
But then, after in the 1950s, Israel got closer to America.
Okay.
And so, therefore, then the world was divided between the kind of capitalist America and allies, and the Soviet and her allies. So what the Soviets did is that they supported, after 1948, War of Independence, they supported the Egyptians and the Syrians and the Iraqis, and started supplying them with arms and weapons. And actually, Turkey, as then and still is a member of NATO, the Western Defence Alliance, actually in 1950 recognised Israel's right to exist, the first Muslim country to do so, and called upon the rest of the Arab world to stop their hostilities towards Israel and to make peace, because Israel and this nation will benefit the region. So that was the first country to do that. But going back to the Yom Kippur of 1973, this took Israel by surprise, because the Soviets resupplied the Egyptians and the Syrian armies. And then on a surprise attack, which was on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, the Egyptians invaded the Sinai Peninsula, and the Syrians invaded the north. Now, one incredible miracle took place during that war, and this was known called the Valley of Tears, where there were 5 Israeli tanks up against 120 newly supplied Soviet tanks.
Say that again.
There were this place in Israel up on the Golan Heights. The Syrian army with 120 tanks or more were on only 5 minutes or 10 minutes away from actually crossing over the River Jordan to attack Israel in the Galilee. And defending that position were only 5 Israeli tanks. And what happened then is that those Syrian tanks just suddenly stopped. And then they went back. Later on in that war, an Israeli tank commander captured one of the Syrian tank commanders and asked him, "You were so close. We only had 5 tanks. You were so close to actually crossing over the Jordan, where you would have put the whole of the Galilee under threat. Why did you stop and go back?" And the tank commander said that he saw this white man on a horse and surrounded by hundreds of pure white kind of men on horses. And this one particular guy put his hand up and said, "Stop, go no more."
Angels.
Angels. Or even Yeshua himself leading that army.
And that is God keeping his covenant.
And so therefore, when it comes to Israel, it's not surprising that we see the supernatural intervention of God. And that's why we are, as Christians, called to be watchers on the walls of Jerusalem, to pray and intercede for his people and his land, because Israel technically shouldn't be able to survive in the most hostile region of the world, because it's there in the heart of the Arab Islamic world, surrounded by enemies who want to destroy her, and yet despite that she prospers.
And at every stage you see God's intervention to keep them there, because like Simon said, they're surrounded by all this hostility, a tiny nation, but God has kept them. There's several wars, but time will not permit us to explore all of them. And we're going to be praying that we'll have Simon again some other day. But there have been several wars, and they fought right through after 1948, when the nation was established. The 67 one, which is a big one, 73 one, which is just sharing with us. And all these wars should be our concern. We should be mindful how they have fought to keep the land in existence. God has made them caretakers. This is you and I, our prayer points. We should be mindful of that, and always be mindful of praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Because it's not easy being there, like Simon rightly said. There's no reason for them to be there after all that is happening. But look at what God is doing. Modern day miracles, even in the midst of the wars. God is showing up. Time is just going. But I want to ask one question. I want to ask Simon, have there been any challenges at all in carrying forward this mandate?
I think there's always challenges when you touch upon Israel, because when you touch upon Israel, you're touching upon the apple of God's eye. You are touching his people, and there comes a huge responsibility. in speaking up and defending his people, the Jewish people, and the nation of Israel. So we know also that Satan hates the Jewish people to the extent that he has throughout history tried to absolutely annihilate them. You only have to look at the kind of book of Esther to realize that.
Yes.
You only have to look at our modern era with the Holocaust to know that. And also knowing now that a nation like Iran is building nuclear weapons so they can destroy Israel. So the realities are that if you enter into Israel, you enter into spiritual warfare. And so therefore it's important to do what is right in this generation, because I believe that the Christians in the 1930s failed the Jewish people when the Holocaust went on. There were few brave individuals, but they were few and far between.
Right.
And God is calling us today to stand with his people and his nation, because he's redeemed them. And this is why it's so significant, because for the first time really in world history, we have the church and the nation of Israel living alongside each other.
Right.
That happened for a very small time during the early church, for about 30 years, up until the death and resurrection of Yeshua HaMashiach, then followed by the early church and the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 by the Romans. So we are in a unique period of world history.
Right.
And a unique period to stand up for Israel. Wherever you are hearing us today, it's time for us to stand up so that mistakes of the past will not be repeated. You can pray for them. You can stand up. You can protest. You can speak to your MPs when you see decisions that are being made contrary to the word of God, contrary to the will of God, where Israel is concerned. Today we've been exploring some of the errors in our foundation, which concerns us, because we need to pick them out and explore them, make amends, so that we would all be on the same page. It's been such a blessing having Simon, and unfortunately we don't have much time, so I think we really have to pray that we will have him again. But before we go, the Bible says that we are not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It is the power unto salvation for everyone who believes, but to the Jew first. Let's keep praying for the salvation of the Jewish people, that they also will come in. God never left them. Apostle Paul said, God forbid. God did not replace them with anybody. We were adopted into the family that existed. And that is why we have to continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
They will prosper.
Simon, I was just saying, we have to pray that you come back and share more with us. It's been such a blessing. And we've,
very informative.
We have so much more to explore. So we're going to be praying very hard. We know you're very busy, but we really appreciate your coming. And we are very humbled and blessed to have you with us today. So we also want you to know that we are encouraged by everything you do. And God bless you greatly.
God bless you as well.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Evelyn. And Anthony, thank you so much.